The Enterprise D sailed through the Caleb sector at Warp 6, running routine astrometric surveys along the Federation's outer rim. On the bridge, Captain Jean-Luc Picard reviewed stellar cartography reports while his crew maintained their standard watch rotations. The hum of the warp core resonated through the deck plating with its familiar, almost meditative rhythm. 3 weeks into a 6-month survey mission, the crew had settled into the comfortable routine of scientific exploration, cataloging nebulae, charting subspace currents, mapping uncharted star systems. It was the kind of mission Starfleet had been designed for: peaceful discovery without the complications of diplomacy or conflict. Then reality tore open directly ahead of them. "Captain," Lieutenant Worf's voice cut through the bridge's calm. "Massive spatial distortion bearing 0 Mark 27. It's..." He stopped, staring at his tactical console. "Sir, sensors cannot identify the phenomenon. It's not a wormhole, not a subspace rupture. Energy readings are completely outside known parameters." Picard rose from his command chair, moving to stand behind Worf's station. On the main view screen, space itself had begun to fracture. Geometric patterns of impossible light, oranges and golds that shouldn't exist in the visible spectrum, spiraled outward from a central point, creating mandala-like structures that defied three-dimensional geometry. The patterns rotated and interlocked with mathematical precision, yet violated every principle of Euclidean space. "Full stop," Picard ordered. "Mr. Data, analysis." The android's fingers moved across his console with inhuman speed. "The phenomenon appears to be multidimensional in nature, Captain. I am detecting energy signatures from at least 7 spatial dimensions beyond our normal 4. The patterns suggest deliberate construction rather than natural occurrence, but the underlying physics are inconsistent with our understanding of dimensional mechanics." "Inconsistent how?" "The energy does not appear to originate from subspace, yet it demonstrates faster than light propagation. It is as if..." Data paused, his positronic brain processing impossibilities. "As if the phenomenon operates according to entirely different fundamental forces than those governing our universe." The fracture expanded, and through the geometric patterns, something moved. A humanoid figure tumbled through the breach, surrounded by a billowing crimson cloak that moved with apparent sentience. The figure's hands traced rapid gestures, creating smaller versions of the geometric patterns that seemed to slow his momentum. But something was clearly wrong. The patterns flickered unstable, and the figure's trajectory remained chaotic. "He's going to impact our shields," Worf announced. "Deactivate forward shields, Section 12 Alpha," Picard commanded immediately. "Transporter room, lock on to that individual and beam him directly to sick bay. Commander Riker, security team to medical. Counselor Troy, please accompany me." Behind them, the spatial fracture collapsed with a flash of golden light that briefly illuminated the bridge, then vanished completely. Space returned to its normal configuration as if nothing had happened. The Enterprise's sensors swept the area, finding no residual energy, no subspace distortions, no evidence that the impossible breach had ever existed. In sickbay, Dr. Beverly Crusher stood over her newest patient with an expression somewhere between fascination and frustration. The man wore strange robes, blue with elaborate trim and what appeared to be an antiquated Earth symbol on his chest. The red cloak lay draped across a nearby chair, and Crusher could have sworn she'd seen it shift position when she wasn't looking directly at it. The man himself was unconscious but stable, human in physiology with no apparent injuries beyond some bruising and what her medical tricorder insisted was severe dimensional displacement shock, a diagnosis the computer had never offered before. His eyes opened, sharp, intelligent, and immediately wary. He sat up with the controlled movement of someone accustomed to dangerous situations, hands already moving in complex gestures before he seemed to remember where he was. "Welcome aboard the Enterprise," Picard said, stepping forward with Counselor Troy at his side. "I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the United Federation of Planets. You've had quite an entrance, mister." The man's eyes swept the room, taking in the advanced medical equipment, the distinctive Starfleet uniforms, the alien technology. Something in his expression shifted, recognition mixed with disbelief. "Dr. Stephen Strange," he said, his voice hoarse but steady. "And unless I'm very much mistaken, I'm no longer in my own universe." He looked at Picard with the gaze of someone who had seen impossible things and survived them. "Tell me, Captain, what year is this? And please tell me you've at least heard of Earth." "It's 2367, and yes, Earth is the Federation's founding world," Picard replied. "Though I'm curious what makes you think you've crossed between universes." Strange gestured at the medical equipment, at the view screen showing stars outside the ship, at Data standing in the doorway with his golden eyes and pale skin. "Because I know dimensional displacement when I experience it. I'm a sorcerer, Captain Picard. The Sorcerer Supreme of my Earth, in fact. I was pursuing an interdimensional entity called a Mindless One through the mirror dimension, when something went catastrophically wrong with my portal. The dimensional coordinates scrambled, my connection to the mystical dimensions severed, and I ended up here." He stood, testing his balance, and his cloak immediately wrapped around his shoulders. "In what appears to be a future where humanity has achieved faster-than-light travel and built starships. A future my Earth never had." Deanna Troi stepped forward, her empathic senses focused on the stranger. "Captain, I sense no deception. He believes everything he's saying. But there's also immense discipline. His mind is extraordinarily well-ordered, almost Vulcan in its control, but with emotional depth carefully compartmentalized." "Occupational necessity," Strange said, looking at her with interest. "You're empathic. Betazoid, if my brief glimpse of your mind while unconscious was accurate." "Half Betazoid," Troy confirmed, slightly surprised. "You sensed my telepathic probe. I've trained with the masters of Camartage in mental disciplines that span centuries of mystical tradition. Telepathy, even gentle telepathy, creates distinct patterns in the astral plane." Strange looked back at Picard. "Captain, I appreciate the rescue, but I need to understand exactly where and when I am. Then I need to find a way home before the entity I was hunting finds a way through as well. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Live long and prosper." Picard exchanged glances with Riker, who had entered with the security team but hadn't raised any weapons. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation in the observation lounge. It seems we have much to discuss, Dr. Strange, including your claim of being a sorcerer in an age of science." Strange's slight smile held centuries of argument on that exact topic. "In my experience, Captain, sufficiently analyzed magic becomes science, and sufficiently advanced science becomes indistinguishable from magic. I suspect we're about to test which perspective better explains reality." The observation lounge felt smaller with Strange's presence. He sat across from Picard with Commander Riker, Data, Geordi LaForge, and Counselor Troy completing the circle. Through the viewports, stars streaked past at warp speed, a sight Strange had watched with undisguised fascination when they'd first entered. "You're genuinely traveling faster than light," he'd murmured. "Not dimensional shortcuts or reality manipulation, actual faster-than-light propulsion." The wonder in his voice had been genuine, the reaction of a man who understood the theoretical impossibility of what he was witnessing. Now Picard leaned forward, fingers steepled in his characteristic gesture. "Dr. Strange, I'll be direct. My crew and I have encountered many unusual phenomena in our travels. We've seen beings of immense power, the Q continuum, Organians, even entities composed of pure energy. But we've always been able to explain these phenomena through science, even if that science is beyond our current understanding. You claim to practice magic. In the 24th century, we've found that magic is simply science we don't yet comprehend." "I've had this conversation before," Strange replied, unperturbed. "Usually with brilliant minds who've built their entire worldview on rational principles." He raised his hand and, with a gesture, created a small mandala of golden light that rotated above the table. The geometric patterns shifted and interlocked with hypnotic precision. "Tell me what your sensors detect, Commander Data." Data's tricorder was already active. The phenomenon emits no electromagnetic radiation in the traditional spectrum. There are trace tachyon emissions, but not consistent with any known subspace field. The geometric patterns appear to exist partially outside normal four-dimensional space-time. I cannot identify the energy source." Strange closed his hand and the mandala vanished. "Because it's not energy as you understand it. I'm channeling power from—" He stopped, frowning. "Or I should be channeling it from the dimensional nexuses that exist in my universe. The dark dimension, the mirror dimension, the countless mystical realms that provide the foundation for sorcery." His expression grew troubled. "Except they don't exist here. Your universe operates on entirely different fundamental principles." "Subspace," Geordi said, his visor tracking energy patterns the others couldn't see. "We've got subspace instead of mystical dimensions. I'm seeing something weird, though. When you created that thing, there were subspace fluctuations, but they were fighting against what you were trying to do. Like your magic was trying to pull energy from somewhere that doesn't exist, and it was settling for subspace as the closest alternative. That would explain why my spells feel like I'm pushing through water," Strange said grimly, "and why I couldn't maintain my portal stability when I arrived. The mystic arts require tapping into dimensional energy sources, but if those dimensions don't exist in your universe's structure—" He stood, pacing to the viewport. "It's like being a combustion engine in a universe without oxygen. The mechanism still works, but there's nothing to fuel it properly." "Then how are you able to perform these spells at all?" Picard asked. "Because magic isn't just pulling energy. It's about will, knowledge, and the fundamental truth that reality is more malleable than most people believe." Strange turned back to face them. "I'm adapting, forcing the spells to draw from your subspace instead of my dimensions. But it's inefficient, draining, and I have no idea how long it will take to fully acclimate, if I even can." Riker leaned back in his chair, studying Strange with the tactical assessment of a first officer evaluating a potential threat. "Let's say we accept your explanation for now. You mentioned you were hunting something when you arrived. Should we be concerned about this mindless one following you through?" "Unlikely, but not impossible," Strange admitted. "Mindless ones are extra-dimensional beings, powerful but not particularly intelligent. They're drawn to mystical energy. Once they lock onto a target, they're extremely difficult to dissuade." He met Riker's gaze directly. "If one did follow me through, your ship would be in immediate danger. They're essentially living siege engines, capable of tearing through most barriers." "Most barriers," Data echoed. "But not all. I've fought them before. They can be contained, banished, or in extreme circumstances, destroyed. But it requires specific spells and significant power." Strange's jaw tightened. "Power, I'm not certain I can reliably access in this universe." Troy spoke up, her voice gentle but probing. "You're afraid. Not of the entity itself, but of being powerless. Strange's laugh was short and humorless. Counselor, I spent years as a neurosurgeon before an accident destroyed my hands and my career. I know exactly what powerlessness feels like. I became a sorcerer specifically to never feel that helpless again. He looked at his hands, steady now, but with the faint tremor visible to those who knew to look. Finding myself in a universe where my abilities are compromised? Yes, that concerns me. Picard stood, moving to stand beside Strange at the viewport. Dr. Strange, the Federation has faced many challenges to our understanding of reality. Each time we've approached the unknown with scientific curiosity and an open mind. I won't pretend to understand your abilities, but I also won't dismiss them simply because they don't fit our current models. He met Strange's eyes. However, I must ask, what are your intentions? What do you need from us? Honestly, information first, Strange replied. I need to understand the physics of your universe well enough to adapt my magic to work reliably. Then I need to find a way to re-establish dimensional coordinates to my own reality and create a stable portal home. He paused. And if a mindless one does follow me through, I'll need to neutralize it before it destroys everything in its path. That's my responsibility. We have a saying in the Federation, Picard said. Infinite diversity in infinite combinations. Your presence here, Dr. Strange, may challenge our understanding of the universe, but perhaps that's not such a terrible thing. Science advances through examining what we don't understand. The problem, Data interjected, is determining whether Dr. Strange represents a reproducible phenomenon that can be studied scientifically, or whether he is truly an anomaly that exists outside our natural laws. Strange smiled slightly. Commander Data, you are an artificial life form, correct? A sentient android. That is correct. And I imagine there were those who argued that true artificial consciousness was impossible, that you couldn't really be sentient, that you must simply be an extremely sophisticated program mimicking intelligence. Data's head tilted slightly. There are still those who make such arguments. Then you understand that sometimes reality doesn't care about what our theories say is possible. Strange looked around the table. I'm not asking you to abandon science, Captain. I'm asking you to accept that your science might not be the only framework for understanding existence. Before Picard could respond, the comm system chirped. Bridge to Captain Picard. Picard here. Worf's voice carried an edge of tension. Captain, we're detecting an unusual subspace distortion forming 300,000 kilometers off the port bow. It bears similarities to the phenomenon that preceded Dr. Strange's arrival, but the energy readings are significantly more aggressive. Strange's expression shifted immediately to one of grim recognition. That's not a similarity, Lieutenant. That's the mindless one. It found me. He was already moving toward the door, his cloak billowing behind him. Captain, I need to get to your bridge now. Picard tapped his comm badge as they strode rapidly down the corridor. All hands, yellow alert. Lieutenant Worf, raise shields and prepare defensive postures. Do not fire unless I give the order. He glanced at Strange. What exactly are we facing? Imagine a creature 12 feet tall, composed of dense mystical matter, capable of generating destructive energy from its body, and completely immune to reason or negotiation, Strange said as they entered the turbo lift. Its only purpose is to destroy whatever mystical signature attracted it. In this case, me. Bridge, Picard ordered, and the turbo lift began its ascent. Can it be reasoned with? It's called mindless for a reason, Captain. The turbo lift doors opened onto organized chaos. The bridge crew had responded to yellow alert with practiced efficiency, but the view screen showed something that made even the experienced officers pause. Space was tearing open again, but this time there was nothing beautiful about it. The geometric patterns were jagged, aggressive, burning with purple-black energy that seemed to corrode the fabric of reality itself. And through the breach stepped something that defied every principle of matter and energy the Federation understood. The creature that emerged from the dimensional rupture stood suspended in the void of space, violating several fundamental laws of physics simply by existing. It resembled a humanoid figure carved from living darkness, 12 feet of dense matter that sensor readings couldn't properly classify. Where its face should have been, there was only a blank expanse broken by 2 points of sickly purple light. Energy crackled across its form in sporadic bursts, and it moved with the inexorable patience of something that had never encountered an obstacle it couldn't destroy. "Shields holding at 100%, Worf reported, his voice steady despite the tactical console showing energy readings that made no sense. "But Captain, I cannot get a weapons lock. The targeting scanners cannot establish the entity's exact position in space-time, because it exists partially outside your dimensional framework," Strange said, stepping down to stand near the view screen. His hands had already begun moving through complex gestures, golden light forming intricate patterns around his fingers. Its phase shifted slightly out of alignment with your reality. Your weapons would pass right through it. Data's console chimed rapidly. The entity is generating what appears to be a focused beam of extra-dimensional energy, projecting trajectory now. A line appeared on the view screen, pointing directly at the Enterprise. "Impact in 7 seconds. Evasive maneuvers," Picard ordered. "Full impulse, pattern Delta 4. The Enterprise banked hard to port, but the beam tracked their movement with impossible precision. It struck the shields with a sound like reality screaming, and the entire ship shuddered. Sparks erupted from the bridge consoles and the lights flickered. "Shields down to 62% from a single hit," Worf announced grimly. "I recommend we move beyond the entity's range and formulate a strategy." "It will follow," Strange said, "and anything in its path will be destroyed." His cloak suddenly billowed outward, and before anyone could stop him, he was striding toward the turbolift. "I need to get outside the ship." "Outside?" Picard followed him. "Dr. Strange, that's suicide. We're in space." "Captain, sorcerers have been visiting the astral plane, which includes the vacuum of space, for centuries. I can survive out there long enough to do what needs to be done." Strange turned, and his expression was harder now, the face of a man who'd fought cosmic battles. "That thing is here because of me. I won't let your crew die because I led it to your doorstep." Riker moved to block the turbolift. "We don't abandon people to face threats alone. That's not how Starfleet operates." "Then we're wasting time arguing while that thing charges another blast." Strange's hands moved, and a mandala appeared directly in front of him, a portal showing the Enterprise's transporter room. He stepped through it before anyone could react, and the portal snapped shut behind him. "Damn it," Picard muttered. "Mr. Data, can you track him?" "He has just materialized in Transporter Room 3. He is requesting emergency site-to-site transport to coordinates outside the ship's shields." Picard made a decision. "Grant his request, but keep a transporter lock on him. If he's injured, beam him directly to sickbay." He looked at Geordi. "Commander LaForge, I need you to analyze that entity's energy signature. If Dr. Strange can't stop it, we need to find a way to fight back." "Already on it, Captain," Geordi said, his visor tracking energy patterns across multiple spectrums. "But this is like nothing I've ever seen. The entity's generating power from somewhere outside normal space-time. It's pulling energy from, I don't even know what to call it. Subspace doesn't work like this." On the view screen, Strange materialized in space, 50 meters from the Enterprise's hull. His cloak spread wide, forming a protective barrier around him. and his hands moved through an elaborate series of gestures. The mindless one turned its featureless face toward him, and the purple lights that served as its eyes flared brighter. "Shields of the Seraphim." Strange's voice came through the comm system, somehow audible in vacuum through means the universal translator struggled to interpret. Golden light erupted around him, forming a massive circular barrier between himself and the creature. The mindless one fired again, and the beam struck the shield with tremendous force. Strange held firm, but those watching from the bridge could see the strain on his face. Data's console chirped urgently. "Captain, Dr. Strange's biosigns are showing significant stress. His body is compensating for vacuum exposure, but the energy expenditure required to maintain his protective field is considerable. Additionally, the shield he's created is drawing power from local subspace fields in a highly inefficient manner. At current rates, he will exhaust his capacity in approximately 4.3 minutes. Hail him," Picard ordered. Strange's image appeared on a portion of the view screen, split with the view of the mindless one. "Rather busy, Captain. You're fighting at a disadvantage. Let us help." "How?" Strange grunted as another blast struck his shields. "Your weapons can't touch it, and I'm barely holding it off. I need to—" He stopped mid-sentence, eyes widening. "Wait, Commander LaForge, you said it's pulling energy from outside space-time. What if we could sever that connection?" Geordi's hands flew across his console. "How? We don't even understand the mechanism." "But I do," Strange said. "It's drawing power from what I'd call the dark dimension, a realm of pure mystical energy. In my universe, I'd simply perform the banishment of the Vishanti to sever its connection and force it back. Here," he grimaced as another impact rattled his shields. "Here, I'd need to channel the spell through your subspace, which means I need significantly more power than I can generate alone." Data's positronic brain processed the problem at computer speeds. "Dr. Strange, could you explain the fundamental mechanism of this banishment spell? If we understand the principle, we might be able to assist by providing additional energy through the ship's deflector dish." "It's about creating a resonance frequency that disrupts the dimensional anchor," Strange explained quickly. "Like shattering glass with sound, but across dimensional barriers. I create the pattern, pour power into it, and—" Another blast. His shields flickered. "And I run out of power before I can complete it. Unless you can feed me energy I can actually use." Geordi and Data exchanged looks. "We could try routing power through the main deflector," Geordi said. "If we modulate the frequency to match the subspace patterns Strange is already generating, we might be able to amplify his spell. That would require precise coordination," Data noted, "and we would be channeling ship's power into a process we do not fully understand." "Do it," Picard ordered. "Dr. Strange, we're going to attempt to boost your power through our deflector dish. Tell us when you're ready." Strange's smile was fierce. "Captain, I've channeled power from artifacts, demon lords, and cosmic entities. I think I can handle your deflector dish." His hands moved into a new configuration, creating a more complex mandala that rotated on multiple axes simultaneously. "Geordi, I need you to watch my energy pattern. When I reach the critical resonance point, flood the deflector with everything you can spare. Route it through the frequency I'm establishing. This has to be precise." "I've got your pattern locked in," Geordi confirmed. "Standing by." The mindless one seemed to sense something was changing. It charged forward, energy building around its form for what would clearly be a devastating attack. Strange's voice rose, speaking in languages that predated human civilization, words that made reality itself shiver in response. The mandala grew, expanding to encompass dozens of rotating geometric layers. Each layer spun at different speeds. creating a hypnotic pattern that drew the eye and confused the mind. "Now!" Strange shouted. Geordi's hands moved. Deflector power at maximum, routing through Strange's frequency pattern. A beam of pure energy lanced from the Enterprise's main deflector, striking Strange's mystical construct. Instead of destroying it, the beam integrated with the spell, and suddenly the mandala blazed with combined power. Federation technology married to mystical force. The construct shot forward, engulfing the mindless one completely. The creature thrashed, its form destabilizing. The purple lights flickered and dimmed. Around it, space itself began to tear. Not the controlled geometric patterns of Strange's portals, but chaotic rifts that led nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. "The dimensional anchor is severing," Data reported. "The entity is losing cohesion." Strange's arms swept down in a final gesture. "Begone!" The mindless one exploded into fragments of dark energy that scattered into the chaotic rifts. The rifts collapsed in on themselves, sealing shut with a flash of light, and then there was only empty space where the creature had been. The dimensional breach that had allowed it to enter was gone, sealed by the same spell that had destroyed its physical form. Strange floated in vacuum for a moment longer, breathing hard, then tapped the strange amulet at his chest. "Enterprise, I could use that transport now." Moments later, he materialized on the bridge, the cloak of levitation settling gently around his shoulders. He looked exhausted but triumphant. "Gentlemen, I believe we just created the Federation's first counter-mystical weapons system. Starfleet Academy is going to have an interesting time writing that one up." Picard stood, genuine respect in his expression. "Dr. Strange, that was remarkable. The coordination between your abilities and our technology shouldn't have been possible," Strange finished. "But it was. Because your chief engineer is brilliant, and because you were willing to try something completely outside your standard protocols." He looked at Geordi and Data. "You two just helped me perform one of the most difficult banishment spells in mystical practice, using nothing but subspace physics and a deflector dish. That's actually more impressive than anything I've done today." Geordi grinned. "We just turned magic into engineering. Wait until I tell Reg Barclay about this." "Actually," Data said, his head tilting thoughtfully, "we may have done the reverse. We turned engineering into magic. Or perhaps we demonstrated that the distinction is less meaningful than we assumed." Strange laughed, genuine warmth in the sound. "Commander Data, I like the way you think." He sobered, looking at Picard. "Captain, I appreciate everything you've done, but we need to talk about what comes next. I still need to find a way home, and after what we just did, I suspect I'm not the only one who's noticed something unusual happening in this sector of space." As if on cue, Worf's tactical console chirped urgently. "Captain, I'm detecting a cloaked vessel decloaking off the starboard bow. Configuration matches a Romulan warbird." His voice carried grim certainty. "They're hailing us." The Romulan warbird hung in space like a predatory bird, its distinctive shape silhouetted against the stars. The vessel dwarfed the Enterprise D, its massive wings and aggressive design, a stark reminder that not all species in the galaxy shared the Federation's diplomatic ideals. The green disruptor banks along its hull remained powered, but not yet charging, a threat held in reserve. "On screen," Picard ordered, straightening his uniform jacket with the characteristic tug that his crew knew meant he was shifting into full diplomatic mode. The view screen shifted to show a Romulan commander, her features sharp and her expression calculating. She wore the uniform of the Romulan Star Empire with the bearing of someone accustomed to command and to getting what she wanted through whatever means necessary. Behind her, the bridge of the warbird was dimly lit, shadows playing across consoles manned by efficient crew. I am Commander Telek of the warbird Hakona, she said, her voice carrying the melodic accent of her people. Captain Picard, we detected unusual spatial distortions in this sector. Distortions that, according to our long-range sensors, originated from your vessel. Her eyes moved past Picard to lock onto Strange, standing near the tactical station. And that appeared to be associated with the presence of an unknown humanoid whose biosignature is unprecedented. Commander Telek, Picard replied smoothly. We encountered an extra-dimensional incursion. The situation has been resolved. There's no threat to navigation in this region. An extra-dimensional incursion, Telek repeated, her tone making it clear she wasn't satisfied with such a simple explanation. Captain, the Romulan Star Empire monitors the neutral zone very carefully. When we detect energy signatures that don't match any known technology, Federation, Klingon, or otherwise, we take a keen interest. She leaned forward slightly. Especially when those signatures suggest the ability to manipulate dimensional barriers. Such technology could have significant strategic applications. Riker stepped forward slightly, his body language subtly protective. We're not in the neutral zone, Commander. You're the one who's crossed into Federation space. Barely, Telek conceded with a slight smile, and only to investigate a potential threat to galactic security. I'm sure the Federation Council would understand our caution. Her attention fixed on Strange again. The individual standing on your bridge, he is not wearing a Starfleet uniform. He is not in your crew database. Yet he appears to be the source of these dimensional distortions. I would very much like to know who he is and what technology he possesses. Strange had been quiet, assessing the situation with the tactical eye of someone who dealt with powerful entities making veiled threats. Now he stepped forward, moving to stand beside Picard. Captain, may I? Picard's expression showed surprise, but also curiosity. He gave a slight nod. Strange looked directly at the Romulan commander. I'm Dr. Stephen Strange. I'm a traveler from another universe. Not another dimension in your space, but literally another reality with different physical laws. I ended up here by accident while dealing with a threat in my own universe. The entity you detected us fighting was something that followed me through. It's been neutralized, and I'm working on finding a way back to my own reality. That's all there is to know. Telek's eyebrow rose in that distinctively Romulan expression of skepticism mixed with interest. Another universe. How fascinatingly convenient. And I suppose the technology that allowed you to travel between universes is also conveniently unavailable. It's not technology, Strange said bluntly. It's sorcery, magic, mystical arts practiced by humans, at least humans from my Earth, for thousands of years. In this universe, it works differently because the fundamental physics are different, but the principle remains the same. He created a small mandala in his palm, letting it rotate for a moment before closing his hand. I'm not hiding Federation technology. I'm demonstrating abilities your science doesn't have the framework to replicate. The bridge of the Hakona was silent for a moment. Telek's expression had shifted to something more complex, calculation mixed with genuine intrigue. Magic, she said finally. Captain Picard, does Starfleet now recruit wizards? Dr. Strange is not a member of Starfleet, Picard said carefully. He's a civilian who arrived in our space through extraordinary circumstances. We're providing humanitarian assistance while he attempts to return home. Humanitarian assistance. Telek's smile was sharp. How characteristically Federation of you, Captain. Though I notice you were quick to weaponize his abilities against that creature. The energy readings from that engagement were quite remarkable. A banishment spell. I believe Dr. Strange called it. She paused. We recorded everything. Worf's hand moved fractionally closer to his tactical controls. A motion Telek's tactical officer almost certainly noticed and reported. "Commander," Picard said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "Are you suggesting the Romulan Star Empire intends to interfere with our provision of humanitarian aid?" "Not at all," Telek replied smoothly. "I'm merely suggesting that Dr. Strange's presence raises questions that extend beyond simple humanitarian concerns. Questions about dimensional technology, about new forms of weaponry, about what else might cross over from these other universes he speaks of." She looked directly at Strange again. "The Romulan Empire has always valued knowledge, Dr. Strange. We would be very interested in learning more about your abilities. Perhaps we could offer you resources to assist in your journey home, resources the Federation might not have access to." "You're offering to help me," Strange said, his tone making it clear he understood exactly what kind of help was being offered. "I'm suggesting that the Empire might be better positioned to assist someone with your unique requirements," Telek said. "We're less constrained by idealistic restrictions, more willing to pursue practical solutions, regardless of how unconventional they might be." Strange glanced at Picard, then back at Telek. "Let me make something very clear, Commander. I've dealt with entities who tried to tempt me with power, knowledge, and shortcuts to my goals. Demons, dark gods, and ancient forces that make your empire look like children playing with toys. I've always chosen the harder path because I learned early that deals with those who operate in shadows tend to cost more than they're worth." His expression hardened. "I appreciate the offer, but I'll find my own way home." Telek's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Respect, perhaps, or simply acknowledgement of a stance she understood, even if she disagreed with it. A principled position. But principles, Dr. Strange, often become flexible when one is desperate. She looked at Picard. "Captain, I'll file a report with Romulus about this encounter. I expect Starfleet Command will be similarly interested in your guest. I wonder which of our governments will decide his fate first." "Dr. Strange is a free individual," Picard said firmly. "Neither the Federation nor the Romulan Empire has any authority over him." "Legally, perhaps," Telek acknowledged. "But we live in a galaxy where legal niceties often bow to strategic realities. Enjoy your humanitarian mission, Captain. I suspect it will become considerably more complicated very soon." She made a gesture, and the screen went dark. The warbird hung in space for another moment, sensors clearly continuing to scan the Enterprise, then engaged its cloaking device and vanished from visual and most sensor readings. "She's moving away," Worf reported. "Bearing 147 Mark 6, she's returning to Romulan space." "But she'll be watching," Riker said grimly. "She recorded everything." "The Tal Shiar is going to be very interested in Dr. Strange." Strange moved to the viewport, looking out at the stars. "I've complicated your situation, Captain. I'm sorry for that." "You defended my ship and crew," Picard replied. "That's not something to apologize for." He joined Strange at the viewport. But Commander Telek raised a valid point, even if her intentions were less than pure. "Your presence here does raise questions that extend beyond simple physics or philosophy. If entities from other universes can cross into ours, whether by accident or design, then we need to understand the implications." "Agreed," Strange said, "which is why I need to get home as quickly as possible and seal the breach that brought me here. Every moment I remain increases the risk of more crossovers." He turned to face Picard. "But to do that, I need to understand your subspace physics well enough to recreate dimensional portal magic using different fundamental forces. That's going to take time, resources, and probably more experiments like the one we just conducted." Data stepped forward. "Dr. Strange, I would be very interested in assisting you with this research. The intersection of your mystical principles and our subspace physics presents fascinating theoretical challenges. I could help too, Geordie added. From an engineering perspective, figuring out how to make your magic work with our tech could lead to entirely new applications. Gentlemen, I'd welcome the help, Strange said. But Captain Picard, you need to understand what you're agreeing to. My presence has already attracted the attention of the Romulans. Depending on what else is out there monitoring dimensional anomalies, we might attract more visitors. Some of them might not be as diplomatic as Commander Telek. Picard considered this for a long moment, looking at his senior staff, then back at Strange. Dr. Strange, Starfleet's mission is to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. Your arrival has opened a door to realities we never imagined existed. Yes, there are risks. There are always risks when we explore the unknown, but the potential for understanding, for growth, is worth those risks. He moved to his command chair, sitting with the confidence of a captain who'd made his decision. You'll work with Commander Data and Commander LaForge to understand how your abilities function in our universe. Counselor Troy will assist in ensuring you're adapting well psychologically to being displaced from your reality, and I'll deal with any political complications that arise from Starfleet Command or other interested parties. A slight smile. In the meantime, Dr. Strange, welcome to the Enterprise. I suspect your stay will be educational for all of us. Strange returned the smile, though his eyes carried the weight of someone who understood exactly how complicated things were about to become. Captain, I've taught at the Kamartaj, trained some of the most powerful sorcerers in my universe. I'm looking forward to seeing what Starfleet's finest can teach me about this new reality. As the Enterprise resumed its course, neither Picard nor Strange noticed the brief subspace fluctuation that occurred 2 sectors away. A fluctuation that carried a coded transmission to a hidden base, where figures in shadows reviewed the Romulan scan data with great interest. Section 31 had been watching, and they had questions of their own. The Enterprise D's stellar cartography lab had been converted into an improvised mystical research facility. Holographic projections of subspace layers floated alongside Strange's hand-drawn mystical diagrams, creating a bizarre fusion of 24th century science and ancient sorcery. Data stood at one console, his positronic brain processing the mathematical relationships between dimensional magic and subspace physics. Geordie worked at another, his visor allowing him to see energy patterns that normal human eyes couldn't detect. Strange himself sat cross-legged in the center of the room, surrounded by floating mandalas as he practiced channeling spells through subspace rather than mystical dimensions. Fascinating, Data observed, watching a mandala form and dissolve. Your hand gestures serve as both mnemonic devices and actual components of the spell structure. The patterns encode multi-dimensional equations that would require significant computational power to solve, yet you perform them instinctively. Centuries of practice by thousands of sorcerers, Strange replied, opening his eyes. The gestures were refined over time to be the most efficient method of shaping mystical energy. In your terms, they're like a programming language for reality itself. He stood, stretching. Though in this universe, I'm essentially learning to code in a completely different language while the program is running. Geordie looked up from his scans. I'm seeing something interesting. When you cast spells now versus when you first arrived, there's a pattern. Your energy efficiency is improving. You're pulling about 15% more power from the same amount of subspace disruption. You're adapting. Good, Strange said. Because I estimate I'll need at least triple my current efficiency to create a stable portal home. The dimensional calculations alone require power levels I haven't needed to channel since... He stopped, frowning. since I fought Dormammu in the Dark Dimension, and that nearly killed me." The door chimed and Counselor Troy entered, carrying a piad. Her empathic senses immediately picked up the tension in the room. "Am I interrupting?" "Not at all, Counselor," Strange said, though his tone suggested he'd been grateful for the interruption. "We're just contemplating impossibly difficult magical engineering problems, the usual." Troy smiled, but her expression quickly became more serious. "Dr. Strange, I need to speak with you privately. Something has come up that requires your immediate attention." Data and Geordi exchanged glances. "We will continue analyzing the data," Data said. "Please inform us when you are ready to resume testing." Strange followed Troy into the corridor, his cloak billowing behind him. "What's wrong, Counselor? Your emotional state suggests this isn't a routine check-in." "You're getting better at reading people," Troy observed. "But no, this isn't routine. We received a coded transmission an hour ago. Someone wants to meet with you privately. Someone from Starfleet Intelligence." Strange's expression darkened. "Let me guess, they want to discuss the strategic applications of dimensional magic." "They want to discuss your future," Troy said carefully. "Captain Picard has been dealing with inquiries from Starfleet Command ever since we filed our report about your arrival. Most of them have been standard diplomatic questions. This one is different." They entered a briefing room where Picard waited with a man Strange hadn't seen before. The stranger wore a nondescript Starfleet uniform with no insignia indicating rank or assignment. He was middle-aged, unremarkable in appearance, the kind of person who could disappear in a crowd. But his eyes held a calculating intelligence that Strange recognized immediately. He'd seen that look before in people who operated in moral gray zones. "Dr. Strange," the man said, standing, "I'm Agent Harris. I work for a division of Starfleet that handles sensitive matters." "Section 31, Strange said flatly. It wasn't a question. Harris's eyebrow rose slightly. "You're well informed for someone who's been in our universe less than a week. I've read enough about your Federation's history to recognize the signs of a covert intelligence organization. Every government has them, no matter how idealistic their public face." Strange remained standing, his posture deceptively relaxed. "What does Section 31 want with me?" "To help you," Harris said simply, "and to help the Federation in the process." Picard's expression was carefully neutral, but Troy could sense his discomfort. Section 31 operated outside official channels, pursuing what they considered the Federation's interests through methods Starfleet officially disavowed. Their very existence was controversial, and captains like Picard preferred to maintain distance from their activities. Harris activated a holographic display, showing a star map. "Dr. Strange, your arrival was not as unnoticed as you might think. We've detected 3 separate attempts by Romulan intelligence to track the Enterprise's movements. The Tal Shiar wants you. They believe your abilities could give them a significant strategic advantage over the Federation. Which is why I'm staying with the Enterprise and not taking Commander Telek's offer," Strange replied. "Yes, but you're also not accepting the Federation's protection either," Harris continued. "You're maintaining your independence, which we respect. However, independence requires resources. We can provide them." He highlighted several locations on the star map. "We have facilities equipped with experimental technology that might help you understand this universe's physics. We have researchers who've studied dimensional anomalies, classified research that Starfleet science doesn't have access to. We have the means to help you get home faster." "In exchange for what?" Strange asked, though he already knew the answer. "Information," Harris said. "We want to understand your abilities, document them, learn how they work. If other entities from your universe or others like it cross over, we need to know how to defend against them." The mindless one you fought was relatively straightforward, a powerful but mindless creature. What if something more intelligent arrives? Something with hostile intent and abilities that our technology can't counter? Strange was silent for a moment, considering. The offer was tempting. Section 31 likely did have resources that could accelerate his research significantly, but he dealt with enough shadow organizations to know that deals with people like Harris always came with hidden costs. "And if I say no," Strange asked, "then you continue your research with the Enterprise's facilities, which are impressive but limited," Harris replied. "You remain a person of interest to multiple galactic powers without the protection that official Federation status would provide. Eventually, someone will make a move. Romulans, Cardassians, perhaps even the Borg if they detect your unique energy signature. Your independence will become a liability." "That sounds almost like a threat, Agent Harris," Picard said quietly. "It's a statement of reality, Captain," Harris replied. "Section 31 doesn't make threats. We prepare for contingencies. Dr. Strange represents a potential asset or a potential security risk. We prefer assets." Strange moved to the star map, studying the locations Harris had highlighted. "These facilities, they're off the books, aren't they? Places where you conduct research that would make the Federation Council uncomfortable if they knew the details." "We do what's necessary to protect the Federation," Harris said. "Sometimes that requires methods that idealists find distasteful, but those methods keep idealists safe enough to maintain their ideals." "I've heard that argument before," Strange said. "Usually from people who convince themselves that any atrocity could be justified if the cause was righteous enough." He turned to face Harris directly. "I appreciate the offer, Agent Harris, but I'm going to decline. I'll continue working with the Enterprise's crew. If my research takes longer, so be it. I won't compromise my principles for convenience." Harris's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment or perhaps resignation. "I expected that answer, Dr. Strange. You strike me as someone with firm moral convictions." He deactivated the display. "But understand, Section 31's interest in you doesn't end with this conversation. We'll continue monitoring your situation. If circumstances change, if you reconsider, we'll be ready to help." "And if I remain inconvenient to your operations?" Strange asked. "Then we'll adapt," Harris said simply. "We always do. Good day, Captain, Counselor, Dr. Strange." He left the briefing room without ceremony, disappearing into the Enterprise's corridors like a ghost. After he'd gone, Picard exhaled slowly. "Dr. Strange, I apologize. I didn't invite Agent Harris aboard. He simply appeared in that room 20 minutes ago. Section 31 has resources I cannot match." "Don't apologize, Captain," Strange said. "I've dealt with worse recruiters. At least he was honest about his organization's methods." He looked at Troy. "Though I appreciate the warning, Counselor. Your empathic abilities told you this wasn't a standard intelligence meeting, didn't they?" Troy nodded. Agent Harris's emotional state was complex. He genuinely believes he's protecting the Federation, but there's also a calculating coldness underneath. He sees everything in terms of assets and liabilities, risks and opportunities. You're a variable he wants to control. "He'll be disappointed," Strange said. "I've spent too long fighting to maintain my independence to surrender it now, even if his offer would make my life easier." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Captain, how much influence does Section 31 actually have within Starfleet?" "Too much," Picard admitted. "They operate in shadows, but those shadows reach into very high places. They've helped the Federation survive genuine threats, which gives them leverage. Most captains pretend they don't exist and hope to avoid their attention. And I've just attracted it," Strange said grimly. "Wonderful. First the Romulans, now Section 31. Anyone else I should expect to come calling? As if the universe had been waiting for that question, the ship's red alert klaxon began blaring throughout the corridors. Picard's comm badge chirped urgently. "Bridge to Captain Picard," Worf's voice carried barely controlled alarm. "Captain, you need to see this. Now." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as Picard, Strange, and Troy rushed from the turbolift. On the main view screen, space itself had begun to distort, but not in the geometric patterns of Strange's magic or even the aggressive tears of the Mindless One's arrival. This was something else entirely. This was mathematical precision married to alien intent. A massive cube, easily 20 times the size of the Enterprise, materialized from subspace with the inexorable presence of a geometric nightmare. Its surface was covered with irregular patterns of technology, constantly shifting and reconfiguring. Green light pulsed across its hull in waves, and energy readings spiked across every spectrum. "Borg," Worf said, his voice carrying the grim certainty of someone who'd fought them before. "Cube-class vessel. They're scanning us." Strange stared at the cube, his mystical senses picking up something deeply wrong about the vessel. It wasn't just the technology, it was the unified consciousness behind it, the hive mind that reduced billions of individuals to mere components of a greater machine. He'd sensed similar corruption in the dark dimension, in realms where identity and free will had been stripped away. "They're hailing," Worf reported. "On screen," Picard ordered, his expression hardening into the focused determination of a captain facing one of the Federation's most dangerous enemies. The view screen shifted to show the interior of the Borg cube. Drones moved in the background, their organic bodies merged with cybernetic implants, working with mechanical precision. In the foreground, a Borg spoke with the collective voice of trillions. "We are the Borg. You will be assimilated. Your technological and biological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile." The drone paused, its single cybernetic eye focusing with sudden interest. Dimensional anomaly detected aboard Federation vessel. Energy signature classification, unknown. Origin, extra-dimensional. Distinctiveness assessment, unprecedented. Adaptation priority, critical. Strange felt the weight of that cybernetic gaze, and his hands instinctively moved into defensive positions. "They're not here for your ship, Captain. They're here for me." Dr. Strange's assessment is correct, data confirmed, analyzing the Borg's scanning patterns. 97% of their sensor activity is focused on his biosignature and energy emissions. They have classified him as a primary target for assimilation. "The dimensional anomaly will be assimilated," the Borg continued. "Mystical distinctiveness will be integrated into the collective. All magical knowledge will become Borg knowledge. You will surrender the extra-dimensional entity, or all aboard the Federation vessel will be assimilated. Compliance is inevitable." Picard stood, his voice carrying absolute authority. "I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation's Starship Enterprise. Dr. Strange is under our protection. Your demand is refused." "Refusal is irrelevant. Assimilation will proceed." The communication cut off. "They're charging weapons," Worf announced. "Tractor beam locking onto our position." "Evasive maneuvers full impulse," Picard ordered. "Ready quantum torpedoes. Target their tractor beam emitters." The Enterprise banked hard, but the Borg cube tracked their movement with unsettling precision. The tractor beam caught them, and the ship shuddered as the Borg began reeling them in like a fish on a line. "Fire torpedoes!" Quantum torpedoes streaked toward the cube, impacting its surface in brilliant explosions. Sections of the hull buckled and collapsed, but within seconds the Borg began adapting. New hull sections grew over the damaged areas like technological cancer, and the tractor beam only strengthened. "They're adapting to our weapons," Worf reported grimly. "Torpedoes are losing effectiveness." Strange moved to the center of the bridge, his mind racing through tactical possibilities. The Borg were unlike anything he'd faced before, a collective intelligence that could adapt to threats in real time. Standard combat wouldn't work. They'd simply analyze his spells, adapt their shields or technology, and counter everything he threw at them. But adaptation required data. And there was one advantage Strange had. The Borg had never encountered magic before. "Captain, I have an idea," Strange said, "but it's going to require perfect timing and trust." "I'm listening," Picard said, watching the cube draw inexorably closer. The Borg adapt to threats by analyzing them and developing countermeasures. They're essentially a distributed learning system, incredibly effective against known technology. Strange's hands began moving, creating small practice mandalas. But they've never encountered dimensional magic before. They have no baseline data, no framework for understanding how it works. Every spell I cast will be completely novel to them. "So they'll adapt after the first spell," Riker said. "That gives us one shot." "Not if I don't give them time to adapt," Strange countered. "I'm going to hit them with multiple different spells in rapid succession. Different energy types, different dimensional manipulation techniques, different fundamental approaches to reality alteration. Their distributed processing will try to analyze and counter each one, but if I cycle through variations faster than they can integrate the data..." He met Picard's eyes. "I can overwhelm their adaptation protocols." "Maybe." Data's head tilted. "A viable strategy in theory, Dr. Strange. However, such rapid spell casting would require enormous energy expenditure, particularly given the inefficiency of channeling magic through subspace. Which is why I need Geordi to route maximum deflector power to me again," Strange said. "And I need the Enterprise to survive long enough for this to work." "Shields are down to 40%, Worf announced. "They're preparing to transport drones to our position." Picard made his decision instantly. "Do it. Commander LaForge, route all available power to the main deflector. Target Dr. Strange's energy signature. Mr. Worf, rotate shield frequencies. Anything to buy us time. Number 1, prepare emergency evacuation protocols for all decks near potential boarding points." "Aye, Captain," the bridge crew responded in unison. Strange closed his eyes, centering himself. The cloak of levitation spread wide around him, and his hands began moving through the most complex series of gestures he'd attempted since arriving in this universe. He could feel the subspace around him, different from the mystical dimensions he'd trained in, but similar enough that his instincts could guide him. He reached deep, pulling power not from a single source, but from multiple layers of subspace simultaneously. "Geordi, now!" Strange shouted. Energy flooded into him from the deflector dish, and Strange became a conduit for forces that neither the Federation nor the Borg had ever witnessed in combination. His eyes blazed with golden light, and he extended both hands toward the view screen. Crimson bands of Cetorak. Mystical chains erupted from his hands, wrapping around the cube's tractor beam emitters. But before the Borg could analyze the spell, he shifted. "Winds of Watum." Hurricane force mystical winds tore across the cube's surface, disrupting their shield harmonics. Again he shifted. Images of Icon. Dozens of perfect illusions of the Enterprise appeared throughout the space around the cube, each broadcasting identical energy signatures. The Borg cube's processing systems struggled to keep up. They adapted to the crimson bands, but by then Strange had already moved to the winds. They recalibrated sensors to identify the real Enterprise among the illusions. But Strange was already conjuring the flames of the Faultine, mystical fire that burned through their shields as if they weren't there. "They're losing tractor lock," Worf reported with barely concealed amazement. "Their targeting systems are confused." Bolts of Balthak lightning erupted from Strange's fingers, striking the cube's primary power nodes. Mists of Monopore. Reality-warping fog enveloped sections of the cube, causing drones to lose coordination as their hive-mind connection flickered. Inside the cube, Borg drones worked frantically to adapt, but each adaptation only prepared them for the spell Strange had already finished casting. The collective's distributed processing, normally its greatest strength, had become a liability. Too much novel data, too many completely different threat types, all arriving faster than integration protocols could handle. 7 of the sons of Cinnabus. Strange's voice rose, power flooding through him. Mystical energy detonated across the cube's hull in 7 simultaneous explosions, each one targeted at critical systems his dimensional sight had identified. The cube shuddered. Its shields flickered and failed. Sections of hull began to decompress as the geometric precision of Borg architecture broke down under the assault of forces that simply shouldn't exist according to their understanding of physics. Shields of the Seraphim. Strange created a massive barrier around the Enterprise, and the ship broke free of the failing tractor beam. "Now, Worf," Picard commanded. Every weapon the Enterprise possessed fired simultaneously. Quantum torpedoes, phaser arrays, even the photon torpedoes they'd been holding in reserve. The weapons struck the cube's compromised hull, and critical systems began to cascade into failure. "We are the Borg," the mechanical voice said, but now it carried an edge of something that might have been confusion. Adaptation to dimensional manipulation, incomplete. New data required. Tactical withdrawal. Necessary. The cube began to turn, moving away from the Enterprise with damaged propulsion systems. Within moments, it vanished into transwarp, fleeing to regroup and analyze the unprecedented data it had gathered. Strange collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. The golden light faded from his eyes, and his cloak settled protectively around him. Geordi immediately cut the power feed from the deflector. "Dr. Strange!" Beverly Crusher was on the bridge in moments, medical tricorder already scanning. "Your neural patterns are showing extreme stress. You pushed yourself too far." "Had to," Strange managed. "Had to hit them with more than they could process. Give them too much data, instead of too little." He looked up at Picard with exhausted triumph. "Did it work?" "You drove off a Borg cube," Picard said, genuine awe in his voice. "Something that very few vessels have ever accomplished." "Yes, Dr. Strange. It worked." Data was already analyzing the combat data. Fascinating. The Borg's adaptation protocols were overwhelmed by the sheer variety of dimensional manipulation techniques. They attempted to create countermeasures for 17 different spell types. But Dr. Strange cycled through variations faster than their collective consciousness could integrate defensive solutions. It was the equivalent of defeating a supercomputer with a flood of paradoxical inputs. "They'll be back," Strange warned, accepting Crusher's help to stand. "Once they analyze what happened, they'll develop better adaptation protocols. They'll share that data across the collective. Next time won't be so easy." "Then we'll be ready," Picard said. "But for now, we've won." He looked around his bridge at his crew who had just helped a sorcerer drive off one of the galaxy's most dangerous threats. "And we've learned something important, that there are forms of power in this universe that even the Borg haven't encountered. That gives us an advantage we didn't have before." Riker moved to the tactical station, reviewing their status. "Captain, we should move out of this sector. Both the Romulans and now the Borg know we're here. Staying makes us a target." "Agreed. Set course for Starbase 234, Warp 7. We need to report this encounter to Starfleet Command and—" "Captain," Worf interrupted, "I'm detecting another subspace anomaly, but this one is different. It's not Borg. It's not Romulan. The energy signature is... He looked up, his Klingon features showing something that might have been genuine concern. Sir, I believe someone is about to arrive, someone very powerful. On the view screen, a point of white light appeared in space. It grew brighter, more intense, until it was nearly blinding. And then, with a flash that made the stars themselves seem dim, a figure materialized. He wore an elaborate uniform that seemed to shift colors depending on how the light hit it. His face was human, but his eyes held the unmeasurable depths of something far beyond human. He smiled with the casual arrogance of someone who could reshape reality with a thought. "Well," Q said, his voice carrying across the void directly into the Enterprise's bridge speakers without any need for technology. "This is interesting. A sorcerer in Starfleet's playground. And here I thought this quadrant was getting boring." The bridge fell into stunned silence. Most of the crew had encountered Q before, the omnipotent being who treated the galaxy as his personal entertainment, who could reshape reality with a snap of his fingers, who had tested Picard and humanity on multiple occasions with the casual cruelty of a child, burning ants with a magnifying glass. Strange, however, had no such history. His mystical senses immediately identified Q as something beyond ordinary comprehension, a being who existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions, whose power dwarfed anything Strange had encountered outside of entities like Dormammu or the Vishanti themselves. The Sorcerer Supreme instinctively shifted into a defensive stance. "Q," Picard said with weary recognition, "to what do we owe this pleasure?" Q materialized on the bridge in a flash of light, appearing directly in front of Strange with the unsettling grin of someone who'd just discovered a new toy. "Oh, Picard, don't be so dour. I'm here because something absolutely fascinating has happened in my favorite sector of space." He circled Strange like a professor examining a particularly interesting specimen. "An outsider. Someone who doesn't belong in this universe at all. Someone who's been making quite a mess of the natural order." "Natural order?" Strange replied, his voice carefully controlled. "You're a being of apparently unlimited power who treats sentient species like entertainment. You're going to lecture me about natural order?" Q's grin widened. "Oh, I like him. He's got spine. Most mortals tremble when they meet me for the first time. You, Dr. Strange? Yes, I know who you are. I know everything. You look at me like I'm just another cosmic entity you've had to deal with." He snapped his fingers, and suddenly both he and Strange were sitting in comfortable chairs that definitely hadn't been on the bridge a moment ago. "Tell me, have you dealt with many omnipotent beings in your universe?" "A few," Strange replied, refusing to show intimidation. "The Vishanti who empowered me as Sorcerer Supreme. Dormammu, a demon lord who wanted to consume my dimension. The Living Tribunal, who judges the balance of all reality." He met Q's eyes directly. "I've learned that omnipotent often means very powerful and very bored. Which category do you fall into?" Picard stepped forward. "Q, if you're here to conduct another test..." "Relax, Jean-Luc," Q said, waving a dismissive hand. "This isn't about you for once. Though I must say your tendency to collect strays has reached new heights. A sorcerer from another universe. Really? What's next, Klingon opera singers?" He turned his attention back to Strange. "But he's right to be concerned. You see, Dr. Strange, your presence here is disruptive. You're like a virus in a computer system, introducing code that doesn't match the operating system. The universe is trying to reject you, but you keep adapting. It's fascinating. It's also dangerous." "Dangerous to whom?" Strange asked. "To everyone," Q replied, his tone losing some of its playful edge. "Do you know what happens when two universes start to bleed into each other? When the fundamental laws of physics from one reality begin infecting another?" He snapped his fingers, and the bridge view screen changed to show cosmic-scale images, realities colliding, dimensions folding in on themselves, entire galaxies dissolving into chaos. This, universal collapse, reality unraveling at the seams. Data stepped forward, his positronic brain processing Q's claims. Q, are you suggesting that Dr. Strange's presence is causing a breakdown in dimensional barriers between his universe and ours? Not yet, Q admitted, but it could. Every spell he casts, every time he pulls energy from his mystical dimensions through your subspace, he's creating micro-fissures in the barrier between realities. Individually, they're harmless, but if they accumulate, he snapped his fingers again, and the images vanished. Well, let's just say I'd rather not deal with the paperwork involved in explaining to the continuum how I let two universes collapse into each other. Strange stood, his mind racing through the implications. You're saying that using my magic here is destabilizing dimensional boundaries? I'm saying it could if you're not careful, Q replied. Which brings me to why I'm here. I'm going to offer you something the Romulans, Section 31, and even the Borg couldn't. A way home. Right now. This instant. He snapped his fingers and a portal appeared beside them. Not the geometric patterns of Strange's magic, but a window into another reality. Through it, Strange could see familiar architecture. The Sanctum Sanctorum. His sanctum. Home. Q said simply. I can send you back right now. Close the dimensional breach. Seal the barriers. Prevent any possibility of universal collapse. All you have to do is step through. Strange stared at the portal, feeling the pull of it. Home. His universe. The mystical dimensions that made sense. Wong waiting for him, probably worried sick. The sanctum that needed protecting. The responsibilities he'd left behind when the mindless one had dragged him across realities. But he didn't move. What's the catch? Strange asked quietly. Q's smile was approving. Very good. There's always a catch with cosmic entities, isn't there? He stood, moving to stand beside the portal. The catch is this. The moment you go through, I seal the breach permanently, completely, irreversibly. Your universe and this one will never touch again. No crossovers, no dimensional leakage, no possibility of return. He looked at Picard. Which means any knowledge you've gained about magic, any collaboration between mysticism and Federation science, any potential for these two realities to learn from each other, all of that ends. Forever. You're forcing him to choose, Picard said, understanding dawning. Between going home and preserving the connection between our universes. I'm offering him a choice, Q corrected. Something I don't do often. He can go home, be the Sorcerer Supreme his universe needs, and close the door behind him. Or he can stay here, risk the dimensional instability his presence creates, and see what happens when magic and science truly merge. Both choices have consequences. Strange looked at his hands, feeling the tremor that had never quite gone away since his accident. He'd become a sorcerer to escape powerlessness, to find purpose after everything had been taken from him. He'd fought demons and dark gods and threats to reality itself, always knowing that he was protecting his home, his universe, his people. But now he thought about Data's fascination with the mystical arts, the android's endless curiosity about forms of existence beyond pure logic. He thought about Geordi's excitement at channeling magic through the deflector dish, the engineer's joy at discovering entirely new applications of technology. He thought about the way they'd fought the Borg together, combining mysticism and science into something neither universe had ever seen before. He thought about what might be lost if that door closed forever. This is a test, isn't it? Strange said, looking at Q. You're testing me the same way you've tested Picard and his crew. You want to see what I'll choose. Oh, it's much more than a test, Q replied. It's a genuine dilemma. Go home and be safe, or stay and risk everything for the sake of curiosity and potential growth. It's the kind of choice that defines a person, or a universe. Strange looked at Picard. Captain, this affects more than just me. My presence here has already endangered your ship multiple times. The Romulans are watching. Section 31 wants to weaponize me. The Borg will come back with countermeasures. And apparently, I'm creating dimensional instability that could destroy both our universes. He gestured at the portal. Maybe Q's right. Maybe the safest thing is for me to go home and close the door. Picard was quiet for a long moment, looking at the portal, then at Strange, then at his crew. Finally, he spoke. Dr. Strange, when I was first given command of the Enterprise, I was told that our mission was to explore the unknown, to seek out new life and new civilizations. That mission has put us in danger countless times. We've faced the Borg, encountered godlike beings, ventured into spatial anomalies that defied explanation. We could have turned back from any of those challenges. We could have chosen safety over discovery. He stepped closer to Strange. But we didn't, because the potential for growth, for understanding, for advancement, that's worth the risk. Your presence here has opened our eyes to forms of existence we never imagined. Data has learned that consciousness can exist in forms beyond pure logic. Geordi has discovered that engineering and magic are not opposites, but partners. And he smiled slightly. I've been reminded that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than even our advanced science can explain. But the dimensional instability, Strange began. We'll solve it, Picard said firmly. Together, you'll learn to channel magic through subspace without creating dangerous fissures. We'll develop methods to stabilize dimensional boundaries. We'll find a way to bridge our universes safely, not slam the door shut because we're afraid of what might happen. He looked at Q. That's what Starfleet does. We don't run from challenges. We face them. Q slow clapped, his expression somewhere between mockery and genuine respect. Bravo, Jean-Luc. Spoken like a true believer in infinite possibilities. But the question remains. He looked at Strange. What do you choose, Sorcerer Supreme? Home and safety? Or uncertainty and potential catastrophe? Strange looked at the portal one last time, seeing the sanctum, seeing home. Then he turned away from it. Close it, Strange said. I stay. Q's grin was enormous. Oh, this is delicious. A sorcerer choosing science over magic, uncertainty over safety, Starfleet idealism over pragmatic self-preservation. He snapped his fingers and the portal vanished. Very well, Dr. Strange. You've made your choice. Let's see if you survive it. Wait, Strange said sharply. What about the dimensional instability? You said. I said it could be a problem if you're not careful, Q interrupted. I never said it was inevitable. Learn to channel your magic properly through this universe's physics, and you'll be fine. Probably. Maybe. The universe is rather resilient after all. He looked at Picard. Though I'll be watching. If things start to get genuinely catastrophic, I might intervene. Or I might just make popcorn and enjoy the show. Why did you really come here, Q? Troy asked suddenly. This wasn't just about offering Dr. Strange a way home. What are you actually testing? Q turned to her, his expression unreadable. Very perceptive, counselor. What I'm testing is whether two fundamentally different systems of understanding reality, cold scientific rationalism and ancient mystical wisdom, can coexist without destroying each other. Your universe has always dismissed magic as primitive superstition. His universe often treats science as lesser than mysticism. But here, on this ship, you're trying to merge them. He looked around the bridge. I wanted to see if you'd choose that merger over safety. You did. Congratulations. You've passed my test. And the prize? Riker asked warily. The prize is that I won't immediately seal the dimensional boundaries and make this all go away, Q replied. You get to keep your sorcerer, Captain, and all the chaos that comes with him. Enjoy. He began to fade from view. Oh, and Dr. Strange, the Borg will be back. They're currently analyzing your magic, trying to develop countermeasures. When they return, they'll be ready for you. I suggest you be ready for them. He vanished completely, his laughter echoing through the bridge even after his form had disappeared. The crew stood in silence for a moment, processing what had just happened. Then Strange let out a long breath. Well, that was terrifying and enlightening in equal measure. Welcome to dealing with Q, Picard said dryly. Though I must ask, Dr. Strange, do you regret your choice? Strange looked around the bridge at the crew who had fought beside him against the Borg, who had helped him adapt his magic to an alien universe, who had treated him as an ally rather than a threat or a tool. No, Captain, I don't regret it, though I suspect we've just made things significantly more complicated. Captain, Worf interrupted, I'm detecting multiple warp signatures approaching our position. 7 vessels, mixed configuration, Romulan, Cardassian, and... He looked up, his expression grave. And 1 Ferengi marauder. They're converging on our location from different vectors. It appears word of your abilities has spread, Data observed. Multiple factions are now moving to either recruit, capture, or eliminate you. Strange's cloak billowed as if in anticipation of battle. The universe really doesn't want to make this easy, does it? Picard moved to his command chair, his expression hardening into command mode. All hands, battle stations, shields to maximum, ready all weapons. He looked at Strange. Dr. Strange, I hope you're prepared for this, because I think we're about to discover just how much chaos one sorcerer can create in Starfleet's playground. The Enterprise went to red alert, klaxons blaring as the crew rushed to battle stations. On the tactical display, 7 vessels closed in from multiple vectors, a coordinated approach that suggested either unprecedented cooperation between rival powers or, more likely, multiple factions independently reaching the same conclusion about Strange's value. Romulan warbirds, 2 of them, Hakona class, Worf reported, his fingers flying across the tactical console. 3 Cardassian Galore class cruisers, 1 Ferengi marauder, heavily modified, likely a privateer, and 1 vessel of unknown configuration. Sensors cannot identify its origin. The unknown vessel, Data added, is emitting a subspace signature consistent with advanced cloaking technology, but not Romulan in design. It may be a Section 31 vessel, though I cannot confirm. Strange moved to the tactical station, his mystical senses reaching out to feel the approaching vessels. They're not working together. I can sense distinct intentions from each group. The Romulans want to study and weaponize me. The Cardassians see me as a potential threat to neutralize. The Ferengi just see profit. The others... He frowned. The unknown vessel's purpose is murky, but it's definitely watching. Incoming transmission from the lead Romulan warbird, Worf announced. On screen, Picard ordered. Commander Telek appeared, and this time her expression held no diplomatic pretense. Captain Picard, the Romulan Star Empire, has decided that Dr. Strange represents too significant a strategic asset to remain in Federation hands. We are prepared to negotiate for his transfer to Romulan custody. Alternatively, we will take him by force. Choose wisely. Before Picard could respond, the view screen split. A Cardassian ghoul appeared, his reptilian features twisted with military determination. Ghoul Evek of the Fourth Order. The Cardassian Union views this extra-dimensional entity as a potential threat to the established balance of power. We demand he be turned over to us for containment and analysis. A third section appeared, a Ferengi wearing elaborate gold-pressed latinum jewelry. Daimon Goss, I'll pay 5,000 bars of latinum for the sorcerer. No questions asked, no political complications. Pure profit. This has gotten out of hand, Riker muttered. Strange stepped forward. Let me address them, Captain. They're here because of me. Picard nodded, and Strange stood before the view screen, addressing all three factions simultaneously. I'm Dr. Stephen Strange. I didn't come to this universe by choice, and I'm not looking to become anyone's asset, weapon, or commodity. I'm staying with the Enterprise until I can safely return to my own reality. Any attempt to take me by force will be met with force. I've already driven off a Borg cube today. I'm prepared to demonstrate that I'm more trouble than I'm worth to anyone trying to claim me. Telek's eyes narrowed. Bold words, but you're one individual against multiple warships. Powerful you may be, but surely even you recognize the impossibility of your position. Actually, Data interjected, given Dr. Strange's demonstrated capabilities against the Borg, his tactical value assessment may be accurate. He successfully overwhelmed the collective's adaptation protocols through rapid spell variation. Applied against multiple vessels, similar tactics could prove devastatingly effective. Are you volunteering tactical analysis to our enemies, Commander? Gul Evek asked with dark amusement. I am providing factual information that may prevent unnecessary conflict, Data replied calmly. Attempting to capture Dr. Strange would likely result in significant casualties for all parties involved. The logical course is to allow him to continue his research peacefully. Logic, Telek said with distaste, is a poor substitute for strategic advantage. The Cardassian Gull leaned forward. Agreed. All vessels, prepare to fire on the Enterprise on my mark. Once their shields are down, we'll beam the Sorcerer directly to... Wait. The unknown vessel had sent a transmission, and the voice that came through was Agent Harris's. This is Federation intelligence. All vessels are hereby ordered to stand down. Dr. Strange is under Starfleet protection, and any attempt to capture him will be considered an act of war. Section 31, Picard said quietly. Of course. The Federation's covert operations don't concern us, Gul Evek replied. We outgun your single vessel 4-1, even with the Enterprise's support. Do you? Harris's voice carried a dangerous edge. The vessel you cannot detect is equipped with experimental weapons systems that have been field-tested against both Cardassian and Romulan targets. Classified tests, naturally, but effective ones. I'd be happy to demonstrate, if necessary. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. 7 vessels, multiple factions, all converging on a single point of contention. Strange could feel the tension building, could sense the tactical calculations being made by commanders on every ship. Within moments, someone would fire, and then everything would spiral into combat. He'd seen this before, powerful entities squabbling over resources, territories, advantages. He'd watched civilizations destroy themselves, fighting over power they didn't understand. The masters of Kamar-Taj had taught him that sometimes the best way to win a fight was to change the rules of engagement entirely. Captain, Strange said quietly, I need you to trust me. Lower your shields. What? Riker stepped forward. Dr. Strange, that's suicide. The moment your shields drop, I'm going to do something that should convince everyone here that capturing me is a very bad idea, Strange interrupted. But I can't do it through your shields. I need direct access to open space. Picard studied Strange's face, seeing the determination there, the calculated risk of someone who'd faced impossible odds before, and survived. If this goes wrong, you can fire on me yourself, Strange replied. But it won't go wrong. I've been holding back, Captain, trying to adapt gently to your universe's physics, to understand the rules before I pushed boundaries. But sometimes you need to push boundaries to discover what's possible. Troy stepped forward, her empathic senses focused on Strange. Captain, he's actually calm. More centered than I've sensed him since he arrived. Whatever he's planning, he believes in it completely. Picard looked at his first officer, his tactical officer, his android second officer. Then he looked back at Strange. Mr. Worf, lower shields, all decks, emergency bulkhead protocols. If this goes badly, we seal off any breaches immediately. Aye, Captain, Worf replied, though his tone suggested he thought this was madness. Shields down. Strange closed his eyes, reaching deep within himself. He'd been adapting his magic to work through subspace, learning to channel spells through the physics of this universe. But now he was going to do something different. He was going to stop adapting to their universe, and instead force their universe to temporarily adapt to his magic. The cloak of levitation spread wide, and Strange rose into the air on the Enterprise's bridge. His hands moved through gestures more complex than anything he'd performed since arriving, drawing on every discipline he'd mastered at Camartage, every lesson learned from the Ancient One, every scrap of knowledge from the Darkhold and the Book of the Vishanti. By the Vishanti who empower me, Strange's voice resonated with otherworldly power. By the Seraphim who shield the worthy, by the ancient forces that existed before this universe drew its first breath. I invoke the spell of Seven Suns, a binding that transcends dimensional boundaries. Golden light erupted from Strange's form, but this time it wasn't constrained by subspace physics. This was pure mystical energy, raw and undiluted, forcing itself into existence through sheer will and ancient authority. The light expanded outward from the Enterprise, engulfing all 7 vessels in a golden sphere that turned the darkness of space into blazing day. Inside every ship, crew members stumbled as their vessels stopped responding. Weapons powered down, engines fell silent, even life support flickered before stabilizing at minimal levels. The ships hung motionless in space, caught in the mystical equivalent of a stasis field. But Strange wasn't done. Within the golden sphere, images began to form, projections drawn from the minds of every commander present. They saw the Mindless One's destruction. They saw Strange overwhelm the Borg's adaptation protocols. But more than that, they saw flashes of Strange's battles in his own universe, fighting Dormammu in the Dark Dimension, confronting Thanos on Titan, holding back cosmic forces that would have destroyed reality itself. I am the Sorcerer Supreme, Strange's voice echoed through every ship simultaneously. I have defended reality against threats you cannot imagine. I have bargained with demon lords, fought alongside gods, and stood against cosmic entities that predate your civilizations by eons. The images shifted, showing Strange's full power unleashed, spells that reshaped dimensions, magic that rewrote the laws of physics, abilities that made even the Borg's technology seem primitive. I am here by accident, not by choice. I seek only to return home. Anyone who tries to prevent that, anyone who tries to capture me or weaponize my abilities, will discover exactly why my universe's greatest threats learn to fear the title of Sorcerer Supreme. The golden light pulsed once, brighter than before, and Strange added a final element to the spell, a binding that would ensure these factions thought very carefully before threatening him again. He wove into each ship's computer core a mystical marker, a signature that would alert him if any of them moved against the Enterprise or himself in the future. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the golden sphere collapsed back into Strange's form. The ship's systems came back online, weapons and engines responding to their crew's commands once more. But the message had been delivered, and Strange had demonstrated power that even the Borg hadn't fully forced him to reveal. He settled gently back onto the Enterprise's bridge, breathing hard but still standing. The spell had taken enormous energy, probably more than he should have expended, but it had been necessary. The view screen still showed all three commanders. Their expressions had changed. The Ferengi's greed had been replaced by fear. The Cardassians' military confidence had become tactical reassessment. And Commander Telek's expression had shifted to something that might have been respect. The Romulan Star Empire, Telek said slowly, will defer our interest in Dr. Strange. For now. She looked at Picard. Captain, it appears you've acquired quite a formidable ally. I suggest you ensure he remains an ally. The Cardassian Gull simply closed the channel without another word, his ships already turning to leave the area. The Ferengi transmission cut off with a nervous squeak. The Section 31 vessel remained for a moment longer. Impressive, Dr. Strange, Harris's voice came through. You've certainly made your point. We'll be watching your progress with great interest. Then it too vanished, cloaking once again. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Strange swayed slightly, and Beverly Crusher was immediately there with her medical tricorder. That was extraordinarily dangerous, she said, scanning him. Your neural patterns are showing extreme stress, and your cellular structure is exhibiting signs of dimensional phase variance. Whatever you just did, it pushed your adaptation to this universe to its limits. But it worked, Strange replied tiredly. They won't come after me directly now. They know the cost would be too high. Picard stood, moving to face Strange. Dr. Strange, that display of power was remarkable, but it was also a declaration. You've announced to every major faction in this quadrant that you're a force to be reckoned with. That will deter some, but it will make others more desperate to control or eliminate you. I know, Strange said, but the alternative was to let them think I was vulnerable, which would have led to constant attempts to capture me. At least now they'll think twice. He looked around the bridge at the crew who had stood by him through everything. Thank you for trusting me, Captain. All of you. You protected us as much as we protected you, Picard replied. That's what allies do, though I think we should probably leave this sector before anyone else decides to test your resolve. Agreed, Riker said, setting course for Starbase 234, Warp 8. Time to report all of this to Starfleet Command and let them sort out the diplomatic fallout. As the Enterprise jumped to warp, leaving the confrontation behind, Data approached Strange with his characteristic head tilt of curiosity. Dr. Strange, the spell you performed, the way you forced mystical energy to exist without adapting to our universe's physics, that was not efficient. It consumed tremendous power and created significant dimensional stress. True, Strange admitted. But sometimes efficiency isn't the goal. Sometimes you need to make a statement. A statement that may have attracted attention from entities beyond those we've encountered today, Data noted. Your display of power created subspace ripples across multiple sectors. There is no way to predict who or what may have noticed. Strange looked out at the stars streaking past at warp speed. Then I guess we'll deal with that when it comes. One cosmic threat at a time, Commander. But even as he said it, Strange felt a prickling at the edge of his mystical senses, a feeling that Data's concerns were not unfounded. The universe had noticed the Sorcerer Supreme, and not all of its residents were friendly. 3 days after the confrontation, the Enterprise approached Starbase 234 at standard orbital velocity. Strange had spent most of that time in sickbay, recovering from the massive energy expenditure of the spell of 7 suns. Beverly Crusher had been fascinated and frustrated in equal measure. His physiology kept shifting slightly as it continued adapting to this universe's physics, making treatment protocols unpredictable. Now cleared for duty but under strict orders to avoid major spellcasting, Strange stood in the observation lounge with Picard, Data, and Geordi, reviewing their research progress. The holographic displays showed complex equations mapping mystical principles to subspace mechanics, a Rosetta Stone between two fundamentally different understandings of reality. "We've made significant progress," Data reported. Dr. Strange's mystical disciplines can be partially expressed through modified subspace field equations. The efficiency has improved by 37% since we began. At this rate, creating a stable dimensional portal home should be theoretically possible within 4 to 6 weeks. Theoretically, Strange emphasized. The problem is that I need to know the exact dimensional coordinates of my universe. In mystical terms, that's like trying to remember a phone number while reality itself keeps changing the digits. He manipulated the holographic display, showing countless parallel universes, stacked like infinite layers. My universe is one specific layer in an infinite stack. Without precise coordinates, I could end up anywhere. Then we find a way to triangulate those coordinates, Geordi said. We've got the Enterprise's sensors, we've got your mystical perception, and we've got Data's computational power. Between the three, the ship shuddered violently, throwing them against their chairs. Red alert klaxons blared across the ship. "Bridge to Captain Picard." Worf's voice carried urgency. "Captain, we are under attack." They rushed to the bridge to find chaos. The view screen showed not ships, but spatial distortions, dozens of them, opening like wounds in space itself. From each distortion emerged something that made Strange's blood run cold. Borg drones, hundreds of them. Not in ships, but transported directly into space around the Enterprise, each one surrounded by personal shield generators and propulsion systems. They moved with mechanical precision, converging on the ship from all vectors simultaneously. "They've adapted," Strange breathed. Q was right. They analyzed everything from our encounter and developed countermeasures. "Shields at maximum," Worf reported. "But Captain, they're not trying to board us. They're forming a geometric pattern around the ship, a containment field of some kind." Data's console chirped urgently. "Captain, the Borg are generating a resonance field specifically tuned to Dr. Strange's mystical energy signature. They are attempting to suppress his ability to cast spells by flooding local subspace with counter-frequency interference." Strange raised his hands, trying to form a simple mandala. The golden light flickered, struggled, then died. He tried again with the same result. "They've figured out how to jam my magic, without access to the mystical dimensions and now with subspace blocked. I can't." "We are the Borg," the collective voice echoed through the bridge. "Dr. Strange, your adaptation is complete. We have analyzed 17 spell variations from your previous encounter. We have developed countermeasures for each mystical frequency you employed. We have determined that your power requires subspace interaction to function in this universe. That interaction is now suppressed. You will be assimilated. Your mystical distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile." A Borg cube emerged from transwarp, vastly larger than the one they'd fought before. This was a tactical cube, heavier armor, more weapons, designed for assimilating the most dangerous targets. Behind it, 2 more standard cubes materialized. The collective had sent an entire fleet. "Evasive maneuvers," Picard ordered. "All weapons. Fire at will." The Enterprise's phasers and torpedoes struck the lead cube, but the Borg had adapted. Their shields held easily, and they returned fire with devastating precision. The Enterprise shuddered under the assault, shields dropping rapidly. "Shields down to 40%, Worf announced. "They know exactly where to hit us. They've adapted to our tactical patterns as well." Strange tried again to summon his magic, pushing against the suppression field with sheer willpower. He could feel the mystical energy, could sense it trying to respond, but the Borg's interference was too precise. They'd analyzed him at a quantum level during their first encounter and engineered a perfect counter. "Captain, they're preparing to transport boarding parties directly to the bridge," Data reported. Picard stood, phaser drawn. "All hands, prepare to repel boarders. Lieutenant Worf, emergency security teams to—" "Wait," Strange said, his mind racing. The Borg had shut down his connection to mystical dimensions and blocked his subspace channeling. But there was one source of power they couldn't suppress, one they might not have even considered because it existed entirely within his own consciousness. "Captain, I need you to trust me one more time," Strange said. "I'm going to do something the Ancient One taught me, something I've only done once before when I had no other options." "What are you planning?" Picard asked. "The Borg shut down my external power sources," Strange replied. "But they can't shut down my mind. They can't suppress consciousness itself." He moved to the center of the bridge, sitting cross-legged on the deck. "I'm going into the astral plane, a realm of pure thought and consciousness that exists outside physical reality. From there, I can access power they can't suppress because it exists in a dimension they can't perceive or analyze." "Dr. Strange, if the Borg transport boarding parties while you're in this trance," Riker began. "Then you defend me," Strange said simply. "But if I don't do this, they'll assimilate all of us anyway. This is our only chance." Beverly stepped forward. "The astral plane. You're talking about separating your consciousness from your body completely?" "Yes. My physical form will be vulnerable, but my astral form will be free to act without the limitations of physics, theirs or mine." Strange closed his eyes, his breathing slowing. "Whatever happens, don't let them assimilate my body. If they get access to my mystical knowledge through the collective—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Picard looked at his senior staff, then back at Strange. "Commander Worf, establish a security perimeter around Dr. Strange. No one touches him. Commander Riker, take tactical. Data, try to find any weakness in their suppression field. Counselor Troy, monitor Dr. Strange's condition and alert us if anything goes wrong." "Aye, Captain," they responded in unison. Strange's hands formed a final gesture, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "By the light of the Vishanti, I release my hold on the physical. Let consciousness soar beyond matter, beyond dimension, into the realm of pure thought." His body went rigid, then still. His eyes remained open but unseeing, staring at nothing. And above him, visible only to those with the mystical sight to perceive it, his astral form rose, a translucent duplicate of his physical body, glowing with golden light, freed from the constraints of the material universe. The astral Strange looked at his hands, seeing them shimmer with power undiminished by the Borg's suppression field. In this realm, he wasn't bound by subspace or mystical dimensions or any physical law. Here, consciousness itself was the only rule. "Okay, collective," he said, his voice echoing across multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Let's see how well you adapt to an attack that exists entirely in the realm of thought." He flew through the hull of the Enterprise as if it were paper, emerging into open space. The Borg drones floating around the ship couldn't see him. He existed outside their sensor range, outside their perception entirely. But he could see them. More importantly, he could see their hive-mind connection, the quantum entanglement that linked every drone to the collective consciousness. And where there was consciousness, there was vulnerability to astral assault. Strange flew to the nearest drone, his astral hands touching its cybernetic skull. The drone's mind was there, buried deep beneath layers of Borg programming and collective will, but still present. A tiny spark of individual consciousness, forcibly suppressed but not entirely destroyed. "I'm sorry," Strange whispered, and then he struck. Astral energy flooded into the drone's mind, bypassing all technological defenses, because it wasn't technological. It was pure mental force, consciousness attacking consciousness. The drone convulsed, its connection to the collective momentarily severed as Strange's attack overwhelmed its neural pathways. On the Enterprise's bridge, Data's console lit up. "Captain, one of the Borg drones has gone offline. Its connection to the collective has been disrupted. I am detecting no physical damage. The interruption appears to be neurological in nature." "Dr. Strange," Troy said, sensing the astral activity even though she couldn't see it directly. "He's attacking their minds, their consciousness itself." Strange moved to the next drone, then the next, his astral form accelerating as he understood the technique. Each touch severed a connection. Each mental strike created a gap in the collective's distributed network. Individually, each disruption was minor. But as the numbers grew, the cumulative effect became devastating. The Borg collective had never encountered this type of assault. They had adapted to weapons, to energy manipulation, to dimensional magic channeled through subspace. But they had no defense against a consciousness operating in a realm their technology couldn't reach, attacking through a vector their cybernetic enhancements couldn't protect. Aboard the tactical cube, the Borg recognized the threat too late. Adaptation to astral plane assault, impossible. Consciousness attack vector, incompatible with collective processing. Individual minds being severed from... Strange flew into the cube itself, his astral form passing through its hull and into the heart of the vessel. He saw millions of drones, all connected in a vast web of shared consciousness. The sight would have been beautiful if it weren't so horrifying, so many individuals subsumed into a single relentless will. He couldn't free them all. There were too many, and the effort would destroy his astral form. But he could do something else. He could attack the central processing node, the primary consciousness hub that coordinated this entire fleet. Strange found it. A massive organic technological construct at the cube's core, pulsing with the combined mental energy of millions. He gathered every bit of astral power he could summon, drawing on reserves he'd built over years of training and discipline. "For everyone you've assimilated," Strange said. "For everyone you've destroyed. For every individual consciousness you've crushed into your collective. I am the Sorcerer Supreme, and I will not let you add one more voice to your chorus of the damned." He struck with everything he had. The astral assault hit the central node like a psychic hurricane, tearing through layers of collective consciousness and creating cascading feedback through the hive mind. The Borg experienced something they had never encountered: individual thoughts overwhelming collective will, personal identity surging back against forced unity, consciousness itself rejecting the very concept of assimilation. The tactical cube shuddered. Across its hull, systems began failing as the coordinating intelligence that managed them fractured. The two supporting cubes attempted to compensate, routing processing power to maintain the fleet's coherence, but Strange's attack had created a cascade they couldn't stop. "All Borg vessels are experiencing massive systems failures," Data reported, his voice carrying astonishment. "Their hive mind connection is destabilizing. Individual drones are regaining autonomous function." On the view screen, they watched as the geometric precision of the Borg fleet dissolved into chaos. Drones floated in space, their movements no longer coordinated. The cube's shields flickered and failed. The suppression field around the Enterprise collapsed as the drones maintaining it lost their connection to the collective's will. Strange's astral form flew back to the Enterprise's bridge, and with a final effort he rejoined with his physical body. He gasped, his eyes focusing on the present, and immediately doubled over in exhaustion. "Medical team to the bridge," Picard ordered. But he was already moving to support Strange himself. Did it work?" Strange managed. "The Borg fleet is retreating," Worf reported with barely contained triumph. "All 3 cubes are withdrawing to transwarp. The drones in space are being recovered by automated systems, but their coordination is gone." "Captain, I believe Dr. Strange has done the impossible. He's disrupted an entire Borg fleet through sheer force of will." Strange laughed weakly. "Not just will. Consciousness. The one thing they can't assimilate because it's not matter or energy or technology. It's just thought. Pure thought." He looked up at Picard. "The collective will adapt eventually. They'll develop countermeasures, find ways to shield their hive mind from astral attacks. But for now, they'll think very carefully before coming after me again." Beverly arrived with her medical team, immediately scanning Strange. Severe neural fatigue, dangerous levels of synaptic stress, and his consciousness is showing phase variance between astral and physical states. We need to get him to sickbay immediately. As they helped Strange to his feet, he looked at the view screen where the Borg cubes were vanishing into transwarp. "Captain, I think I've overstayed my welcome in this universe. The longer I'm here, the more I disrupt everything. Q was right. I'm like a virus in your reality's operating system. We need to get me home before something worse happens." "Agreed," Picard said. "But first you need to recover. Then we'll find those dimensional coordinates, and we'll get you home. That's a promise, Dr. Strange." Strange nodded, letting the medical team guide him toward the turbolift. But as he left the bridge, he felt that prickling sensation again, the sense that something vast and powerful had noticed him, something even more dangerous than the Borg. The universe was watching, and it was deciding what to do about the sorcerer who refused to play by its rules. 10 days later, the Enterprise held position in an empty region of space, designated only by coordinates that had taken Data's computational abilities and Strange's mystical perception working in concert to calculate. The Stellar Cartography Lab had been converted into what Geordi had dubbed the Dimensional Compass, a hybrid of Starfleet sensors and mystical constructs designed to pinpoint the exact vibrational frequency of Strange's home universe. Strange stood at the center of the lab, his hands moving through slow, deliberate gestures as mandalas of increasing complexity formed and dissolved around him. He'd recovered from the astral assault on the Borg, though Beverly had insisted on daily monitoring. His adaptation to this universe was nearly complete now. He could channel magic through subspace with almost native efficiency, which made it all the more bittersweet that he was about to leave. "The dimensional coordinates are stabilizing," Data reported from his console. "We have achieved a 97.3% match to the residual energy signature from your arrival. I believe we have successfully identified your home universe's unique dimensional frequency." Strange felt it too, a resonance that tugged at something deep within his consciousness. Home. The word carried weight he hadn't fully acknowledged until this moment. "That's it. I can feel my universe's signature. It's like hearing a song you've known your entire life but haven't heard in years." Geordi looked up from his engineering console. "The modified deflector array is ready. We've configured it to amplify your portal opening spell using the dimensional frequency as a targeting parameter. In theory, when you open the portal, we'll be able to boost and stabilize it long enough for you to cross over safely." "In theory," Strange repeated with a slight smile. "My favorite words in any universe." Picard entered the lab with Riker, Troy, and Worf. The captain carried a pad that he offered to Strange. "Dr. Strange, Starfleet Command has reviewed all data from your time here. They've asked me to extend an official invitation, remain in our universe as a special consultant to Starfleet science. We would provide resources, facilities, complete autonomy in your research. You've demonstrated knowledge and abilities that could revolutionize our understanding of reality itself. Strange took the piad, reading the formal offer. It was generous, more than generous. Complete academic freedom, unlimited resources, the opportunity to explore the intersection of magic and science in ways his own universe had never allowed. In his Earth, the mystical community and scientific establishment existed in parallel, rarely intersecting. Here, he could bridge that gap. But he could also see the subtext. Starfleet wanted to understand his abilities, document them, potentially develop countermeasures against similar threats. They were offering him a gilded cage, comfortable and well-appointed. But a cage, nonetheless. "I'm honored, Captain," Strange said, handing back the pad. "But I have responsibilities in my own universe. The Sanctum Sanctorum doesn't protect itself, and there are threats in my reality that only the Sorcerer Supreme can face. My place is there, not here." Troy stepped forward, her empathic senses focused on him. "But you'll miss this, won't you? The collaboration with Data, the engineering challenges with Geordi, even the philosophical debates with the Captain. You found something here you didn't have in your own universe, acceptance of both your mystical and scientific sides." "Yes," Strange admitted. "In my world, I'm either the sorcerer who abandoned science or the scientist who turned to mysticism. Here, for the first time, I've been able to be both simultaneously." He looked at Data. "Commander, working with you has been enlightening. You've helped me see that consciousness and existence are more complex than either pure logic or pure mysticism can explain alone." "The sentiment is mutual, Dr. Strange," Data replied. "You have expanded my understanding of what constitutes life and consciousness. I had believed that sentience required either biological neural networks or sufficiently advanced computational matrices. You have demonstrated that consciousness can exist in forms I never imagined. Astral projections, mystical constructs, even distributed across dimensional boundaries. This has implications for my own existence that I will be processing for years to come." Geordi grinned. "Plus, we got to shoot magic through the deflector dish. That's going into the engineering textbooks as either the coolest or the most insane thing anyone's ever done with a starship." "I vote for both," Riker said with a slight smile. "Though I'll admit, Strange, when you first arrived, I wasn't sure whether you were going to be our greatest asset or our biggest problem." "And the verdict?" Strange asked. "Both," Riker repeated. "Definitely both." Worf stepped forward, and Strange was surprised to see something that might have been respect in the Klingon's expression. "Dr. Strange, you fought with honor against superior numbers. You protected the Enterprise when you could have simply fled. In Klingon culture, such actions create bonds of loyalty. If you ever return to this universe, you will have an ally in the House of Mogh." Strange inclined his head. "High praise from a Klingon warrior. I'm honored, Lieutenant." Beverly Crusher entered the lab with Wong, or rather, with the holographic simulation of Wong that Strange had created from memory using the holodeck. It wasn't perfect, but it had helped with the homesickness. The holographic Wong bowed slightly. "The Sorcerer Supreme returns to his duties," the simulation said, "as it should be. The Sanctum has been without its master long enough." "It's not the real Wong," Strange said, looking at the others. "But creating him helped me remember why I need to go back. There are people depending on me, threats that won't wait, responsibilities I swore to uphold." Picard moved to stand beside Strange, looking at the complex mystical and technological apparatus they'd built together. "Dr. Strange, in the short time you've been here, you've challenged everything we thought we knew about reality. You forced us to question our assumptions, to accept that the universe is stranger and more wonderful than our science alone could explain. That's a gift. Whatever Starfleet Command's political motivations, I personally am grateful for your presence here. Even though I brought the Romulans, Section 31, multiple Cardassian cruisers, a Ferengi privateer, Q, and 2 separate Borg incursions down on your head, Strange asked wryly. Even then, Picard said with a slight smile, because you also showed us that when faced with the impossible, the answer isn't to retreat into what we know, but to embrace what we might learn. That's the essence of exploration, Dr. Strange. You've reminded us of that. Strange felt the weight of the moment, the ending of a chapter he'd never planned to write. Captain, if I may, a piece of advice from someone who's seen multiple realities and fought across dimensions. Don't let Starfleet turn what we've discovered into just another weapon. The intersection of magic and science, of mysticism and rationalism, that has the potential to elevate your civilization to heights you can't imagine, but only if you approach it with wisdom rather than fear, with curiosity rather than control. I'll do my best, Picard promised, though I suspect Starfleet Command will want to classify much of what you've taught us. Let them try, Strange said. But Data has the equations. Geordi has the engineering principles. The knowledge is out there now. It can't be suppressed forever. He moved to the center of the dimensional compass, feeling the resonance of his home universe growing stronger. The cloak of levitation settled around his shoulders, and for a moment, Strange allowed himself to feel the full weight of what he was leaving behind. Friendships formed in crisis. Knowledge shared across impossible barriers. The brief, shining moment when 2 fundamentally different understandings of reality had merged into something greater than either alone. I'm ready, Strange announced. Geordi Data. Initiate the amplification sequence on my mark. Everyone else, you might want to step back. Dimensional portals can be unpredictable. The crew moved to safe positions, but their eyes remained fixed on Strange. He raised his hands, beginning the intricate gestures of a portal spell, but this time, enhanced by everything he'd learned in this universe. He wasn't just opening a doorway between 2 points in space. He was piercing the boundary between 2 entirely separate realities, each with its own fundamental laws. Golden light erupted from his hands, forming the familiar geometric patterns. But these patterns were more complex than any he'd created before, a fusion of mystical tradition and subspace engineering, ancient sorcery channeled through principles his universe had never discovered. Now, Strange commanded. Geordi activated the deflector dish, and a beam of pure energy struck the portal. Instead of disrupting it, the energy integrated perfectly, amplifying and stabilizing the mystical construct. The portal expanded, growing from a small circle to a massive gateway tall enough to walk through easily. Through it, Strange could see the interior of the Sanctum Sanctorum, his home, his responsibility, his reality. And standing in the sanctum, looking shocked and relieved in equal measure, was the real Wong. "Stephen!" Wong's voice came through the portal, distorted by dimensional interference but unmistakable. "We thought you were dead. The Mindless One's dimensional rift collapsed after you went through, and we couldn't trace where." "I'm fine, Wong," Strange called back, his voice thick with emotion he hadn't expected to feel so strongly. "I'll explain everything when I get back, but I need to close this portal quickly before the dimensional boundaries destabilize." He turned to face the Enterprise crew one last time. "Thank you, all of you, for your trust, your friendship, your willingness to embrace the impossible." He looked at Picard. "Captain, I hope someday our universes can reconnect safely. There's so much we could learn from each other." "As do I, Dr. Strange," Picard said. "Live long and prosper." Strange smiled at the Vulcan blessing. And may you continue to boldly go where no one has gone before." He raised his hand in the Vulcan salute, which Data had taught him during their research sessions. Then Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, stepped through the portal and into his own universe. The moment he crossed the threshold, he felt it, the mystical dimensions snapping back into alignment, the familiar feel of the dark dimension's distant pull, the comforting presence of the Vishanti's power flowing through him without subspace interference. He was home. Behind him, the portal began to collapse. He caught one last glimpse of the Enterprise's stellar cartography lab, of Picard and his crew watching him go, of Data raising his hand in a return salute. Then the portal sealed shut with a flash of golden light, and the dimensional boundary between the universes closed once more. Strange stood in the Sanctum Sanctorum, breathing in the familiar scent of ancient books and mystical artifacts, feeling the weight of his responsibilities settling back onto his shoulders. Wong approached, his expression cycling through relief, curiosity, and exasperation. "Stephen, you've been gone for 3 weeks. The Masters of Kamartaj have been in chaos. There's been a dimensional incursion in the Amazon that required intervention, and the Ancient One's journals mentioned a prophecy about the Sorcerer Supreme crossing into a realm of stars and logic that everyone's been debating. Where have you been?" Strange looked at his oldest friend and ally and slowly smiled. "Wong, you're not going to believe this, but I just spent 3 weeks in a universe where faster-than-light travel is commonplace, where ships explore the galaxy in the name of peace and discovery, and where I helped fight cybernetic zombies from the future using magic channeled through a deflector dish." Wong stared at him. "You've been hit with a confusion spell, haven't you?" "No confusion spell," Strange assured him, moving to his chair and sitting with relief. "Though I wish it were that simple. Wong, I've discovered that the multiverse is even more complex than we imagined. There are universes out there that operate on completely different principles than our own, where science has achieved what we accomplish through magic, where reason and logic reign supreme." He looked at his hands, seeing them steady despite the tremor that never quite went away. "And I learned that maybe, just maybe, the divide between mysticism and science isn't as absolute as either side believes." "This is going to be a long explanation, isn't it?" Wong asked. "Very long," Strange confirmed. "But first, tell me what dimensional incursion you mentioned in the Amazon, because I've had quite enough of interdimensional entities for 1 month, but I suppose duty calls." Wong sighed. "It's always duty with you. Welcome home, Stephen." Strange settled into his chair, feeling the familiar weight of the Sorcerer Supreme's mantle, and knew that Wong was right. He was home. But a part of him would always wonder about that other universe, about Data continuing to explore the nature of consciousness, about Geordi engineering new applications of mystical principles, about Picard guiding the Federation into an era where science and wonder walked hand in hand. Somewhere in the multiverse, the Enterprise was still flying, and Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, would never forget his time among the stars. The days following Strange's departure were filled with debriefing sessions, reports to Starfleet Command, and endless analysis of the data they'd collected. But for Picard and his crew, the impact went far deeper than official records could capture. Data had begun a new research project exploring the nature of consciousness across multiple theoretical frameworks: technological, biological, and now mystical. His conversations with Strange had opened questions about his own existence that he suspected would occupy him for years, perhaps decades. Geordi had submitted preliminary proposals for what he called dimensional engineering, applications of the principles Strange had demonstrated, carefully theoretical to avoid Starfleet Security's classification protocols. The Federation might not be ready to embrace magic openly, but they couldn't ignore what they'd witnessed. In his ready room, Picard reviewed the final report he would send to Starfleet Command. Most of it would be classified at the highest levels. Some of it would be denied entirely, relegated to rumors and speculation. But the truth remained. They had encountered something that challenged every assumption about reality, and they had been changed by it. Strange's presence had demonstrated that the universe was more complex than Federation science alone could explain. That mysticism and rationalism, when combined rather than opposed, could create something extraordinary. That exploration meant not just seeking new worlds, but being willing to have your fundamental understanding of existence challenged and transformed. Across the quadrant, other factions were reaching their own conclusions. The Romulan Tal Shiar had declared Strange a potential asset worth future investigation, if he ever returned. Section 31 had archived everything they'd learned, preparing countermeasures and protocols for future dimensional travelers. The Borg Collective had added Strange's distinctiveness to their vast database, adapting their systems to defend against astral assault, ensuring they would be ready if they encountered him, or beings like him, again. And in the depths of space, Q watched from his omniscient perspective, genuinely amused by the whole affair. The Sorcerer had chosen uncertainty over safety, collaboration over isolation. Humanity and its Federation allies had embraced the impossible rather than retreating into comfortable ignorance. Perhaps this universe wasn't as boring as Q had thought. Perhaps these mortals had potential beyond what even the Continuum had anticipated. The intersection of magic and science, mysticism and reason, that was a combination with implications that rippled across realities. Dr. Stephen Strange had entered Star Trek for only 3 weeks, but in that brief time he had planted seeds that would grow in ways neither universe could fully predict. The boundaries between realities remained closed, but the knowledge shared, the friendships formed, and the questions raised would endure. The Enterprise resumed its mission of exploration, carrying with it the memory of a sorcerer who had shown them that the universe was stranger, more wonderful, and more mysterious than they had ever imagined. And somewhere in another reality, Strange stood watch over his own universe, forever changed by his time among the stars. 2 universes had touched, neither would ever be quite the same. Live long and prosper. More stories await.